Born and raised in New York City, she began crafting verse at the tender age of 6 and has been passionately writing ever since. She has garnered a multitude of awards for books like Bronx Masquerade, Jazmin's Notebook, Talkin About Bessie, Dark Sun, The Road to Paris, and Words with Wings, as well as novels including the New York Times bestseller Barack Obama, Son of Promise, Child of Hope. Beyond children's literature, she is celebrated as a distinguished poet with her verses featured in anthologies for both children's and adults. She co-produced and co-hosted the Kids Show in New York and later hosted radio programs for immigrant and educational radio. Her remarkable career has been recognized with multiple awards such as the NCTE Award for Poetry, the Children's Literature Legacy Award, and the Virginia Hamilton Lifetime Achievement Award. I'm proud to introduce this prolific author who has left an enduring mark on the world of literature. Please welcome Nikki Grimes.
Thank you. Great introduction.
Nikki, could you share with us initially what inspired you to become an author and poet? And was there a particular moment in your life that set you on the path to become the celebrated writer you are today?
The moment that automatically comes to mind, always comes to mind, is when I was 6 and I was in foster care, and I was very frustrated, and I had a lot of anger and just a lot of pent-up emotions that were just rising like steam, and I felt like I was going to explode. And then I started writing my feelings, setting my feelings down on the page, and I stumbled upon the power of poetry and how putting my feelings in words on the page was a great release and relief for the emotions, the strong emotions I was feeling that I didn't know what else to do with. And once I discovered that, I kept doing it because I couldn't have articulated why it had that power, but I definitely realized almost immediately that once I'd written about what was on my mind, on my heart, I felt lighter. I felt better. Things hadn't changed, but inside I wasn't holding on to them. I had released some of that anger and frustration and anxiety, and I just felt better and felt stronger to continue going. So I'm like, wow, this is cool.
Was there a specific book that had a profound impact on you and helped shape your love for literature?
A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. This was the first book I read where the young character had a life as full of trauma as my own, and he survived. And I'd longed for a book like that resonated with me, where I could see at least some aspects of my own life reflected on the page. And it was also a girl who lived in the city. Brooklyn was a place I spent a lot of time living in. So I was able to relate to this character on a number of levels, but this book also showed me it was possible to write honestly about difficult topics for readers my age, readers who wrestled with difficult issues of their own and who needed to see themselves on the pages of a book as sorely as I did. That book showed me what was possible.
In your extensive career as a poet and author, you've explored various forms and themes within your poetry. Could you share an example of a specific poem that holds a special place in your heart and explain why it resonates with you?
But there are a couple of collections that are very, very special to me. And they're both collections that deal with golden shovel poetry form. And that's One Last Word and Legacy Women Poets of the Harlem Renaissance. In the latter, there's a poem titled Mother to Daughter, which was inspired by Georgia Douglas Johnson's poem, Your World. And my poem reads, Ebony, the true unrealized promise of you is your greatest asset, yet the gendered world would keep it secret. The televised lie is what this life sells as sweetly as honey on the tongue. Your beautiful body, big or small, is all. Your heart is measured as nothing. Your strength lightly weighed, and presto, you find your horizon snipped as though you'd no wit to make your own bold, broad, limitless choices. Have none of it. Yes, it's tough to tune out the false voices, I understand, but it is vital. Only you know your potential. If unsure, listen for the whispers of your heart. Look to your dreams. I learned to find my full capacity reflected there. Use those dreams as guides to chart my journey. At your age, though I was inclined to abide the lies told about my limits, never daring to look in. My idea of me shriveled until I was the size of a new chick, small enough to wedge in the narrowest spaces. I became a chirpless bird, bound to the nest, until your grandmother told me I needn't be. That in fact I could fly, could soar if I had a mind to. Then no one or thing could keep me in a corner. Ebony, you are in every way my child. You can fly too. You simply have to find your wings. Don't let the haters of the world continue pressing them down. They'll clip your wings if you let them get too close. Don't. Decide which piece of sky you want to own and make your flight plans. My money's on you, sweetie. I'll be right by your side. Now, I chose this poem because I'm at that place in my life where I think a lot about legacy, about passing on whatever bits of wisdom I've learned along the way in my own journey. And this is a poem about a mother sharing her wisdom with her daughter. A lot of my writing now is about that, passing on what I've learned. And that poem kind of exemplifies that.
You mentioned golden shovel poetry. Do you mind explaining what that is?
Yes, it's a wonderful form created by poet Terence Hayes. We originally came up with it as a form to use to celebrate the work of Gwendolyn Brooks. And it's a form in which you borrow lines from an existing poem. In that case, it was a poem by Gwendolyn Brooks, but you borrow words from a poem and in the order that you find them. So you're taking an entire line or two or three, however many you would choose to take. And then you line the words up in the right column one by one. And then you write a new line that ends in that word. And so you create an entirely new poem using those words. So if you've borrowed a line that has 3 words, you'll have a 3-line poem. It has 5 words, it's going to have a 5-line poem, and so on. And you are, while you're bound by the words, you are free to write about whatever. It can be the same subject as the original poem, or it can be completely different. That's totally your choice. Anyway, so I've done a couple of collections of those as an opportunity to introduce young readers to some of the lesser known or unknown poets of the Harlem Renaissance. And legacy was all about the women who are, in general, lesser known. That's historically the way it is. It was a way to introduce these poets and their works. So yeah, so I had big fun with that. Anyway,
your contributions to literature have been recognized with numerous awards, including the Children's Literature Legacy Award. Could you share a defining moment or experience that you believe has had a lasting impact on your writing and career?
Well, if you're talking about awards, the Coretta Scott King Award for Bronx Masquerade was the first one that shifted my career into an upward trajectory. That novel went on to become a modern classic and has remained so for more than 20 years and counting. It's probably best known among educators who have taught this book and continue to teach this book every year, year after year after year. Usually there'll be a class study, like the entire ninth grade will read it, or the 10th grade, or whatever it is. So this book has become a classic, and it marked me as one to watch. And that first major award, it's hard to imagine without it that I'd ever have been nominated for the Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award, which I was a couple years ago. So it was definitely an important one. It got everything started.
You've had the opportunity to engage with young readers internationally through poetry readings and lectures. Can you tell us a particular memorable interaction or experience that stands out to you and highlights the power of literature in connecting with young minds?
Actually, the first memory that came to me is something that happened right here in the States. Not that it couldn't have happened somewhere else, but I was speaking to a group of middle graders at a library somewhere in the Midwest. I was talking about, among other books, The Road to Paris, which is a book that they had read, the novel they had read. And in The Road to Paris, there's a section about the main character, a girl named Paris, who's wrestling with fear. And her foster brother encourages her to just keep God in her pocket. And he explains that by thinking of God as being that close, he's able to assuage his own fears. And so he coaxes Paris to give it a try. As I said, the students I spoke with had just read that novel. And one of the girls brought a basket with her holding plastic discs painted in gold on which she'd written the word God on one side of the disc. And she proceeded to pass them out very solemnly, inviting each child to take a disc and put it in their pocket as a reminder whenever they were wrestling with fear. This gave me chills, and it still does. It was just such a powerful representation of the story, of the power of the story, of story in general, and how a reader can take it to heart and make it their own. It was clear it had impacted her life, and then she turned around and impacted the lives of every child in that class, and mine, by doing that. So yeah, it's a pretty powerful thing.
As an advocate for the importance of diversity in children's literature, what advice would you offer to aspiring authors and poets from underrepresented backgrounds who aspire to share their stories and experiences through their writing?
First and foremost, be your authentic self. Be authentic to your own experience and your own voice. You have stories that someone in the world needs to read. They're stories that only you can tell in the particular way that you can tell them. Those stories are necessary. So don't be stingy. Don't keep them to yourself. They need to be shared. Stories can plant seeds of empathy and compassion. Stories can bring people together. And the world needs more stories like that.
Your memoir in verse, Ordinary Hazards, has faced challenges and controversy in some school districts. It's a story that touches on the dark side of foster care, abuse, on a parent's alcoholism, mental illness, and childhood trauma. But it's a true tale filled with grace, love, and lessons in the power of poetry. Ultimately, Ordinary Hazards is a story of hope. Can you share your perspective on why it's important to address tough topics in literature for young readers and how your book contributes to this conversation?
Well, the fact of the matter is, while it's a memoir and these are experiences that I've had, they reflect experiences that many other children have had as well. And it's so important to be able to see yourself in a book, see your experiences, and know that you are not all alone in the world. that someone else has been where you are. More importantly, that they have come out on the other side. They have survived, and in my case, thrived. And there are other people who have both survived and thrived in their life, who came from difficult circumstances. Often when you're in the middle of them, there's nobody there to tell you that, to give you that encouragement or lend you that strength or lend you that ear. So often when you're young and you're having those experiences, they're always wrapped in secrecy. There are things that you're not sharing with your classmates, either because you're ashamed or embarrassed, or you hear everybody else seems to have great lives and great families, so you don't want to bring them down, whatever. But the tendency is just to keep those things to yourself when you really need to get them out. And oftentimes a book is where that happens, where you discover, hey, somebody else has been there and knows exactly what I'm feeling. And look what happened to them, how they survived and how they got through it. It's so important to have books like that. It was, when I think back on my own childhood, books were my reading and writing. They were my survival tools. Reading and writing were my survival tools. And the books that I found kept me encouraged and kept me hopeful and gave me a vision of what my life could be that I couldn't otherwise see. So it's really important to have those books out in the world. And you're not helping anyone by hiding those books away and only having books where life is wonderful and everybody is happy and everyone lives on a farm, which they don't, by the way. But to have this variety and to have books with the difficult subjects that children are young people are anyway having to wrestle with in their real lives, and they need some encouragement, some guidance, some hope that they can get from the stories they read.
Our conversation with Nikki Grimes has been an extraordinary journey, much like the remarkable life she has led. From her early days composing verse as a 6-year-old in upstate New York, to her prolific career as a poet, author, and an advocate for diversity in literature, Nikki's path has been defined by resilience and a passion for storytelling. She reminds us that the life of an author is far from a solitary retreat. It's a continuous journey of engagement, creation, and connection with readers and the world. Thank you, Nikki Grimes, for sharing the intricate mosaic of your life as an author and advocate for literature.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.